Special thanks to our promotional partners at the American Philatelic Society.
The APS is the largest stamp collecting organization in the world, supporting collectors of any level worldwide.
For more information about membership and APS services, visit stamps.org.
I'm Charles Epting from H.R. Harmer in New York City.
And I'm Michael Cortese of Noble Spirit in Pittsfield, New Hampshire.
And this is Conversations with Philatelists. Now, we're going to be talking to Simon Martin-Redman, who I've been lucky enough to meet at a couple of UK shows. He is a fellow of the Royal. He's a very accomplished exhibitor, author, collector. He is Mr. I'm going to call him Mr. Sarawak.
Okay.
Because that's how I've always learned to pronounce the name of the British colony. But I was listening to one of his talks yesterday, and people were calling it Sarawak. Okay. So I think we should ask him up front how to pronounce the name of the colony that he collects, because I'm showing my American ignorance here. But this it's in Southeast Asia. It's a part of Malaysia, I believe. And I know their stamps very well, and I'm sure you know their stamps.
Yeah.
I have a sense this is one of those bits of the Commonwealth that we see the stamps all the time, probably mint more often than not, without knowing much about the history of this part of the globe. So I think this is a great opportunity not only to learn a bit more about Simon's own personal history within philately, but also to learn a bit more about, again, this colony that we see stamps from all the time, but is obsolete, is kind of a dead country. And I think it'll be a good learning opportunity for me, at least me, maybe you too, to learn more about that, as well as his other collecting areas. So I'm really excited for this one. Again, this is just an incredibly accomplished collector and someone who I think and just rewatching his talk to the Royal Philatelic Society, a great speaker as well. So I'm looking forward to this one. This is one where I hope I can just sort of sit back and relax and learn something and enjoy. These are my favorites.
Yeah, what a person to talk to about this topic, because in addition to knowing it so well, he puts together these enormous exhibits.
When he showed at the Royal, it was over 500 pages of material.
588 pages.
Took him 2 years just to I'm really excited to talk to him and learn more about that process as well. Let's bring him on. I'm looking forward to talking to
Absolutely,
Simon.
I'm looking forward to it too, and this should be a good one. All right.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How about yourself?
Very good.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you guys too. It's been a long time. I must admit, I love what you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
We appreciate that very much. I was really excited when you sent me a Twitter note that you were watching. That meant a lot to us.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. There's so much happening in the philatelic world, and I'm sure we will discuss it further. But there are so many people of your age influencing the philatelic world at the moment, which is fantastic news.
We're doing our best to do whatever we can to, Michael and I are both passionate. We do this because it's fun for us, and the fact that other people follow along is exciting. We would still be doing this even if nobody listened, because we just enjoy getting to talk to people like yourself so much.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not alone. I mean, what I love to see is in the philatelic world. I mean, I don't know so much in America, but in the auction houses around the world, you've got young people in positions of influence. Now, you've got you guys, you've got Ricky Barrett at Feldman, you've got at Spink now, you've got Ian, Josh, and Tom. I mean, all young people. Constancia at Grosvenor. Do you know Constancia, Dennis?
I don't.
She's at Grosvenor, and then of course at Spink you've got George, and managing director of Spink is Victoria. I've just been speaking to her. I was speaking to her, and we're just watching her video. She's just done a YouTube video with George about their first stamp collections.
I saw somebody post that this morning. I'm going to put that on later today. That looked like an entertaining concept.
No, those look great. Stanley Gibbons have been putting on those videos for a little while now, and they've been doing fantastic. They're super interesting, and they're I think they're really helping the different levels of collectors, beginners, intermediate, advanced. It's all around it's nice to see this kind of the influence coming from every area of philately.
I mean, you had that fantastic girl on the other day. She was absolutely brilliant. I loved her. She was a force of nature. What was her name? Casey Joe.
Oh yeah, Casey Joe.
Casey Joe is awesome. I think she's a huge part of the future of American philately. I think she's I think she's going to be around for a long time.
Yeah. But what I'm loving is that we first met through the Club de Monte Carlo when you came over with the young philatelists, and some of the greatest collections in the world sit amongst the members of the Club de Monte Carlo.
Yeah.
But we're not influencers anymore. It's you guys at the influencers. People like yourself and Casey Joe, Graham Beck, Suzanne at the PTS in this country. People not necessarily with great collections, but absolutely passionate about the hobby.
Yeah.
And as I said earlier, with the people in the auction houses who are passionate about the hobby, and this is so good, good. Young people will relate to you much more than they relate to the likes of us.
Yeah, and I think it's so fantastic that people like you and Patrick and everybody in the Club de Monte Carlo are people that people like us look up to, and you're so engaged with us. And it's good because we can learn from people who have these enormous, fantastic collections, and then kind of share with the people that we outreach to.
I think it's great because you get to a stage with your collection that I find it very difficult to add to my collection at the moment. So I'm always looking for new areas to collect, and you suddenly find you want a new area to collect, and it's much more difficult to collect a new area than it is. I think Gordon Eubanks, my friend Gordon, summed it up when he had a conversation with you guys, that if there is a major item of Sarawak, or in his case, a major item of early USA, that item will find him.
Yeah.
Every dealer in the world knows if there's a major item, they'll contact us. But like Gordon with his Prexy collection, some of those items are so difficult to get hold of, but he has to search for them. They won't find him. Yeah. And that's what's so fun in the hobby. I mean, I'm always starting new little collections, and I'm sure we'll come on to it later. But trying to find that material is like being a young collector all over again. You searching all over the place for it.
Yeah, things get so specialized. It's no one's ever going to be able to collect everything. So, yeah, it's tough but exciting.
So now you have an exceptional collection, which I would love to talk more about. But can you sort of get us up to speed? Get us how you got to this point. What were your first experiences with the hobby? How did you start collecting? And what made you focus on the area that you eventually came to corner the market on?
The corner of the market, yeah. I started collecting it too. I think I sent you the picture of me, age 2, with a stamp album.
Yeah.
I had a brother who was 9-10 years older who collected stamps. My godfather was a stamp collector, and the village I came in, there was lots of stamp collectors, and so I always collected stamps. And I was taken to stamp shows and philatelic clubs from the age of about 8. I still have the first cover I ever bought myself, posted to myself. Unfortunately, my brother got killed in a car accident when he was 18. So I was 11 years older than me, my brother. I was 9. So I picked up quite a lot of, his bits and pieces. And like all kids, collected GB, because if you live in Britain, you collect GB, and you collect various sort of, the usual stuff of one country, and you buy packets, etc., etc. But I can remember on Thursday nights going around sitting amongst 2 or 3 guys, much older guys than me. I mean, I used to think they were ancient. They're probably younger than I am now. Teach me how to use tweezers, or you call them tongs, don't you? Teach me how to use them. Teach me how to do stamp hinges, etc. And so I've always collected stamps. And then I joined the Navy as a young naval officer. I had 3 kids, and your hobby goes into abeyance for a while. And when I came back to the hobby, I met a guy at a stamp show who was passionate. He collected Sarawak, and I went away and researched, and the history of Sarawak is fascinating. A white man goes out and kills pirates and gets given the country, which, as a private citizen, he owns his own country. I mean, it's real boy's own sort of, sort of very, very exciting story historically. But then I looked at Stanley Gibbons and realized from 1 to 212, SG 1 to 212, on a young naval officer's salary with 3 kids, I could actually be complete in stamps, which was always satisfying because I could never be complete in GB ever. And so I started collecting Sarawak, and it became a passion, an absolute passion. I collect everything Sarawak, ephemera, books, I mean, everything.
How have you visited yourself, and what has that been like for you to, assuming you have, what has that been like for you to have this a more personal connection with the area?
I have been to Sarawak, and it was a bit like the first time I went to the Holy Land. You read the Bible as a kid, Sunday school, and you expect the Holy Land to be like the Bible, and what you do is you find armed soldiers, on the Bethlehem, and it's nothing like the Bible at all. So my knowledge of Sarawak is from 1841 to about 1870. So I was still expecting it to be like that, mud huts and stuff. I went, and it was absolutely brilliant because I am in a WhatsApp group with the Kuching Philatelic Society, which I must get 20 WhatsApp messages a day. So I have friends out there already. And when I went out there, they asked me to do a display, and I'd just done Singapore 2015. And I wasn't allowed to take my collection into the country because of insurance purposes. So I took a complete PDF of my collection to speak at their stamp club on the Sunday lunchtime, or Saturday or Sunday lunchtime, 12 till 2. If I tell you that there was 40 or 50 of them, and they were all still there, gone 6 o'clock at night. It was the most amazing. I mean, they were so interested, and they're so knowledgeable out there. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And they're constantly finding new things, because there are still items in country, and that's superb. So yeah, I love visiting, and the country itself. I mean, obviously the rainforest is the rainforest is the rainforest. That isn't going to change very much. Luckily, I didn't see too much logging because that would have distressed me. But we saw orangutans and all the things you're meant to do. But the city is slightly different. But I visited the old Brook sites and the Brook graveyard, cemetery, etc. And it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it sounds like you put a lot of work into your exhibits. That's probably why they stayed the entire time. In an email that you sent to us earlier, you mentioned that one of your exhibits was 588 pages. How did you accomplish that?
It's to me, it's the highlight of every exhibitor's career, is when you were asked to show to the Royal Philatelic Society the 1 o'clock display, and you're meant to put up 588 pages of quality material. Yeah. And it took me 2 hours, 2 years. Yeah. To write it up to a standard. And the first write-up I had, I showed it to my wife. Luckily, we lived on a farm then and had a big barn, and I had all the display. I put it up, and my wife said, "That looks very boring. You need more color in it." So I completely changed an awful lot of the display, just because not everybody's as fascinated as I am about the subject. Yeah. I mean, we've also got to realize that people are looking at it, and they've got to be drawn into the frame, which is perhaps something we'll come on to in a minute. That, I mean, one of most amazing displays I've ever seen at the Royal was also one of the most boring. And it was 588 pages of pre-stamped covers. You know, fascinating material, but there wasn't a stamp to be seen.
Yeah.
And pre-stamped covers, pages and pages of pre-stamped covers, are difficult just to, you know, get your head into when you're trying to walk around display frames. I don't know if you feel the same way.
No, yeah. I mean, we're seeing a lot more smaller exhibits, things like that are easier to digest, if you will. But so 588 of something that you know, is fascinating but not really visually striking is
I'm not gonna knock stampless covers so as not to alienate any potential consignment. I'm just joking. But when it's
Charles, it's a philatelist. It's a philatelist. Pre-stamped covers are brilliant.
Yes.
I mean, there's so much to learn from pre-stamped cover.
From an aesthetic standpoint, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, what is your philosophy when putting together, you know, whether it's a more manageable exhibit or the Royal 1 o'clock? What is your philosophy into putting together an exhibit? What are you trying? How are you trying to draw people in who maybe, you know, can't even locate these places on a map? What is it that you're trying to convey to them?
I think you have to have an exhibit that people want to look at. So when they're walking down the frames, they suddenly go, wow. I'll give you a good example. At Monte Carlo 2 years ago, my wife, who's not a stamp collector, but she's got a great eye for design. I said to her, just walk around the exhibits and tell me which one or two exhibits you really like the best. Okay? I hasten to add, my exhibit wasn't there. It was otherwise this could have been difficult. But when she came back, the one exhibit she really liked was the best exhibit in the show, which was Gordon Eubanks. I mean, it wasn't a competitive. Monte Carlo wasn't competitive. It was just exhibits. And Gordon's exhibit just drew her in because it's designed well, the colours are great, the material's set out properly. She didn't have a clue what the material was. It just looked good.
Yeah.
And Carol's stuff, you know, Carol's stuff always looks amazing, because she's got a different eye for it. And when I did the and we talked about this, Charles, the Global Philatelic Summit, I was asked to be a keynote speaker on the aesthetics of exhibiting. I have to say it's the hardest presentation I've ever had to do in my life, writing it up. I'm trying to write up an hour's presentation on the aesthetics of exhibiting. It's like trying to pin jelly to a wall. I mean, there wasn't a hook you could really grab on. But it is really important that your exhibit has to draw people in. And that's why I will probably never exhibit thematically, because I find there's too much stuff on one page. You know, I like white space. I think white space is really important. And judges don't always like white space, but sometimes, you know, if you've got an amazing item, just that one amazing item on a page, you know, stands out very, very much.
That sort of restraint is important, and knowing what not to put on a page is as important as knowing what to put on a page. And you're right, with topical exhibits, very often there will be stamps stuck in the corners and margins, and anywhere you can conceivably fit a stamp, there's something.
Yeah, I mean, you call them topical, yeah. I appreciate them, but I'm not drawn into them. You know, it's very difficult to be drawn into so much. You know, I like exhibits, and I mean, Gordon's Wheel of Color. Have you ever seen his Wheel of Color? I mean, it's just amazing. It's such a simple concept, but it works. You know, I love other people's exhibits. I mean, there's lots of great exhibits out there. Jean Verou's, his large gold exhibits are just a joy to see. He does a Switzerland exhibit. And the really great exhibits do draw you in.
Now, on the other side of the coin, we've talked about these massive exhibits for the Royal, or even a 8 or a 10 frame for an international show. But on the completely other side of the coin is something like the Gibbons single page exhibit competition, which you and Ian Gibson Smith, I hear, are the judges of.
Yeah, interesting.
So can you talk about the difference between a multi-100-page exhibit versus a single page? What is it? What do they have in common? What are the different approaches? How do you sort of compare and contrast those two extremes?
Well, you're asking me before I've seen the exhibits, and someone having to show. The competitors are having to show the story of an issue on one page, and I can't wait to see it. I've seen one frame exhibits, which are just quite amazing. To do it on one page, I can't wait to see them. And they will have to use quite a lot of the space on the page as well. So how we get over that dichotomy of drawing me in and showing it would be quite interesting.
Yeah.
But Gibbons asked Ian and myself, I think, just because we both got large gold exhibits ourselves, but neither of us are judges, in the recognized sense. Neither of us are trained to be a judge, nor been on that judge's route. So we're looking at it with a completely different eye. What draws us in, what we think is an exciting exhibit. And we're not going to be prissy about, does it meet all the rules of this, that, and the other?
Yeah, I was going to ask that, is what exactly is it you're going to be looking for? Is it the most aesthetically pleasing, the best storytelling? What do you feel like you're going to be looking for?
It's a bit like trying to describe a camel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you see a camel, it's a camel, but try describing it. And I think both Ian and I have discussed this. We think we'll know straight away which ones we're really going to like.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I've always said it Sarawak. Is that incorrect? Is that an American ignorant pronunciation?
Okay, the correct pronunciation is Sarawak.
Sarawak. No, you don't pronounce the K.
No, but that's the correct pronunciation. But if you go up to a stamp dealer and say, do you have any Sarawak? They think you might have a speech impediment. So everybody uses Sarawak. Even people in Sarawak use Sarawak.
Okay.
That's not the only area that you collect, though.
No, I've got to be careful here because the pronunciation and the spelling are two completely different things. I also checked the Indian state of Vankana.
Okay.
But it's spelled Wankana.
Yeah.
Do you select places to collect based on the difficulty of pronunciation?
Yeah. No, there is a connection. I've been reliably informed by Markandavi that I'm the only person in the world collecting Vankana, and so he I could say Wankana for the British audience, which always causes a titter. But so much so that I was meant to be showing it at Monte Carlo this year, because India was the theme at Monte Carlo. But it's an interesting story that in 1895, Perkins Bacon were asked to produce the stamp papers for Wankana, and they did produce the proofs of the stamp papers, but when they needed to produce the proof, they did not have a picture of the Maharaja of Vankana. But they just printed the 1895 issue for Sarawak. So they had a picture of a Raja, the Raja of Sarawak, but they didn't have a picture of the Maharaja of India, of Vankana. So they put the Raja of Sarawak's head into the proofs of the Wankana stamp paper. Which, can you imagine nowadays if they did it? Because the Raja of Sarawak was a white man, and the Maharaja was an Indian.
Shows you how times have changed.
And the great thing is, there's two of the most stunning, beautiful proofs of the early stamp paper of Wankana with the Raja of Sarawak's head on these proofs. I own both of them, and they're just beautiful. So as a result of that, I started collecting that country, and I thought Sarawak was difficult, but my God, it's even more difficult. But I've got enough for probably coming close to a 5-frame display now, including masses of archival material, which I bought through India.
Mm-hmm. And are you diving as deeply into Vankana as Sarawak? Or
No.
is
Sarawak.
Sarawak?
I might know. For the simple reason is everything is written in Gujarati,
Mm-hmm.
and it's old Gujarati as well.
Yeah.
So there's hardly anybody that can read that stuff.
Yeah.
I could never do a competitive exhibit because they're revenue stamps, and there is no revenue book in existence. So I couldn't say which rate was for what or what rate, and even read in the documents if I could, there wouldn't be. So if I ever exhibit it, it'll be in an open class or just to do it like in Monte Carlo as a bit of fun. I'll never show it competitively.
That's got to be frustrating for a lot of people who are so interested in areas like that where there's no literature for to compete their exhibits.
Yeah, it was suggested to me. Heaven forbid that I would ever do it, but it was suggested to me you could make up the rates and no one would ever know. No judge on the planet would ever know what the real rates were, but I couldn't do that. I'm too much of an honest individual to do it. But it's quite an interesting hypothesis, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Which brings me on to dishonest philatelists, because a few conversations ago you had Dieter on, Dieter Mikkelsen, who suggested the way of philately is perhaps sending your PDFs to the judge beforehand. That caused alarm bells to ring with me, because how would the judges ever know that the person who submits those PDFs actually has the material in their possession?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've seen some amazing small exhibits, not competitive, but just from. I mean, there are people in the Far East who are very, very knowledgeable about stamps.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they have produced for their societies great displays of stamps, and they don't own a single stamp. They basically have taken images from auction catalogs and other people's displays that appear on the internet, and have produced a display themselves with a history of the stamps, and they are very, very knowledgeable. They just don't own the stamps.
Yeah, that's a debate in and of itself. There, I mean, that's virtual exhibiting when you don't actually own any of the material that you're exhibiting.
Yeah. I mean, you could have sold your exhibit 6 months earlier and still exhibit it for an international show with your PDFs. There must be a way around it, but the moment he said it, my alarm bells rang.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to navigate the direction that philately's going online as well, and things that not necessarily everybody has thought of, like that scenario exactly. How do we protect against it?
I don't know. We're also going to have. I mean, exhibiting itself. I agree with Dieter when he said about. People get put off by rows and rows and rows and rows and rows of exhibits, especially in some of the halls where the lighting is so terrible. I mean, Stockholmia was an amazing show, probably one of the best shows I've ever been to, if not the best.
Mm-hmm.
But there were so many exhibits, the lighting down some of the roads was pretty difficult. And it was a superb show. But there were so many people wanted to exhibit there that you just got blown away with the amount of exhibits.
Yeah.
I also think there's going to be a problem with insurance in the future as well, because some of the countries' customs are. I could never take my Sarawak material back to Sarawak because they could then confiscate it for me as historical artifacts.
Really?
So,
wow.
Yeah, I mean, there are other countries like that, aren't there? Burma and places like Myanmar. And so I think there's going to be a problem, and insurers are going to be putting their rates up. I'm sure post this COVID crisis, and there could be exorbitant costs of insuring your material, which you take it with you abroad.
Yeah.
The conversation about PDF exhibiting and digital exhibiting sort of segues into a bigger conversation that's being had. What is your impression of how the hobby has transformed and modernized and adapted during the past year? Because you're on Twitter. I don't know if you'll be attending. We're filming this the week of Virtual Stampex. But then again, there's something irreplaceable about a show like Monaco every 2 years, or like the big international show in London next year. So what is your impression of how the hobby has handled the COVID situation, and what do you think will it'll retain moving forward, and what do you think will return to normal once we're all able to see each other face to face again?
I mean, COVID's been ghastly, but it has been in my view, a lifesaver for the hobby of philately. Not just philately, but the whole of commerce has had to change the way it's operated because of COVID. And digitization of commerce, small firms, all aspects of commerce has probably gone forward 10 years in the space of a year.
Yeah.
And I mean, no one had heard of Zoom a year ago, and here we are on a Zoom call. And what it's done for philately, your own show, conversation with philatelist, Graham Beck stuff, there's so many different blogs, webcasts out there that the world of philately has embraced it. I mean, I did a presentation for the Royal online late December, and I think I had 178 participants from about 38 different countries. Now, if I'd have given that in London, there may have been 80 or 90 people from perhaps 2 or 3 countries.
Yeah.
And, the Collectors Club, the US Postal Stationery Society, everybody is putting their stuff online, and it has just done wonders for the hobby. And we're now talking to people who we'd heard about, but we never had seen or heard from via Zoom calls.
Yeah.
But I mean, economically, because my background's management consultancy, economically, the whole culture of the world has changed. We've always been city-centric. The major New York, Wall Street, London, the city of London, everything has been city-centric. And as a result of this, people will now be working from home more. And I think with more people working from home, the economies of smaller towns are going to increase, because people will be using their smaller towns where they live, just coffee shops, sandwich bars. In the big cities, will people ever go back to big cities in droves? I don't know. But for philately in particular, I think it has been a lifesaver. We've embraced it, and even the real old fogies have embraced it. I mean, how many Zoom calls you had where people said, I don't know how to share a screen, or
I know people who didn't own a computer a year ago who are now Zoom proficient.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and you have the whole preservation of talks and material as well. I mean, not only are these people having these talks, you had your presentation, but they're preserved online infinitely and indefinitely. So the Collectors Club has all their talks, but they had always recorded their talks, but now they have all their talks online for just people to view, and it's adding another level of, if you're interested in the subject, now the information or a presentation on that information is so much more easily accessible to you.
And people now know how to do it. I mean, people now know how to share screen and do PowerPoint and keynote presentations. And when they first started, they were very, very amateur a year ago. But now people are putting some really, really funky displays up online.
Yeah.
They've embraced it. It's superb. And virtual Stampex, it was good last year. It's going to be even better this year.
Yeah. Yeah, we're looking forward to it. So do you think once things open up again, we will keep the same kind of trajectory or the same level of online participation, or do you think we'll find some sort of happy medium level in between, or what do you think where do you think we'll level out at?
I think people I was very pleased with your call from St. Louis this weekend.
Yeah,
that people are embracing it, but I would hope that people will go back to will go back to proper meetings again.
Yeah.
But they must not stop this Zoom calling. I mean, the Royal Philatelic Society, in my view, should still have at least one meeting every 4 to 6 weeks on Zoom, because it's an international organization, the same as the Collectors Club. And to embrace your international members, let's have a Zoom meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, because it then adds a level of people feel like they need to participate in the Collectors Club more, or or the Royal Philatelic Society. It adds an added level of, okay, maybe I can join, or maybe I should join, even though because I'm in New York or they're in London, stuff like that. You feel more connected. There's more of a reason to join if you can participate in the meetings rather than not.
Yeah, the fact that the Royal has members, I mean, I don't know how many countries, it must be 60, 70 countries, it's probably even more. But regularly at a Royal Zoom meeting, there are participants from 35, 40, 50 countries. And I think that's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
It's getting the time zones right. I mean, I was on a Zoom meeting the other night with the US Postal Station Society. I think that was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I literally went on and thought, I can't do this. I really can't do this. As much as I want to listen to this, I really can't do this.
Yeah.
But I mean, going back to this thing about virtual displays, I mean, it is a way forward, because the hassle of taking your display now around the world with insurance is, I mean, my funniest philatelic story. Can I tell you my funniest philatelic story?
Yeah, please.
I was in Monte Carlo. I was presenting in Monte Carlo, and I took my exhibit out with me, and it was only a 90-page exhibit, but the value of that exhibit was probably the price of an average house. Okay. And my insurers, the rule in my insurance was I could take it, but unless it was in the frame, it had to be with me at all time. So I could take it, put it in the frame. Once it's in the frame, okay. Out the frame, it's got to be with me all the time. And I was traveling back from Monte Carlo on a budget airline, unfortunately. The only flight I could get at the time I wanted was on EasyJet. And I detest standing in line. We call it queuing, you call it standing in line. So I always wait for the aircraft to be ready to go, and I'm always the last one on board on budget airlines. So I went on, and I carry my stamps in a Rimaware case, the silver metal luggage. Rimaware. Yeah. So I have a briefcase with this metal, which my daughter calls my spy case. And my exhibit was in there. And I went on board the flight, and the air stewardess, the cabin crew, she said, "I'm sorry, sir, you can't bring that on board with you." And I said, "Why is that?" She said, "All the overhead lockers are full." Oh, no. And I thought, there's no way this is going in the hole. Not with the amount of value in this briefcase. And I said, "I'm awfully sorry, it has to be with me." She said, "Well, you can't bring it on board." And everybody's tutting because they're all waiting to go. And I said, "I'm sorry that if this can't come with me, we're going to have to get my luggage off, and I'm going to have to catch the next flight," at which stage everybody's up in arms. And we're having this conversation, which was obviously going nowhere, when the pilot came out of his little, the cabin and said, "Excuse me, sir, what's the problem?" And I think I'd booked in seat 5 or 6. That's all I had, row 5 or 6. And I said to the pilot, I said, "I'm ever so sorry, but this case has to stay with me. And if it's not, I'm going to have to catch another flight." And he said, "May I ask what's in the case, sir?" And my mind immediately thought, if I say stamps, the average person doesn't understand stamps. If I said stamps, I've lost my argument. So I said, unfortunately, they're documents of extreme national importance that have to be with me. And the pilot said, "Oh, sir, I understand. How about this for a compromise? You put your briefcase in my cabin, in the pilot's cabin, which is locked because, they have to lock it these days. And you sit in seat 1 that you can keep an eye on the door." And he turned around to people in row 1 and said, "Do you mind moving so we can get this aircraft off the ground?" So Claire and I got row 1, which we normally book anyway if we, on a normal flight, but we got row 1. The people got moved. The airplane took off, and as we got off the flight at the other end, my wife turned to me and said, "Documents of extreme national importance." But if I'd have said stamps,
Yeah.
People don't understand the value of stamps.
Yeah. Yeah.
I experience that whenever I try and get through customs to visit the UK or wherever. They are always incredulous when I tell them I'm in the postage stamp business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People don't understand, do they? I mean, I only, about 8 years ago, telling my, close friends that I was a philatelist. It was, people didn't understand. I got to the stage where I just thought, I'm spending so much time doing my hobby. They ought to know what I'm spending my time on. Otherwise, they must have thought I was doing other things. But no, now all my friends embrace it. They understand. They're always interested in the stories of the shows.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people miss out on is the stories, because they don't understand the reason why these items are valuable. But if they understood the history behind them and the fascinating stories that they
and even just the personal stories of going to a show. There's so many people in my life who don't care about stamps whatsoever, but you tell them these funny stories about Monaco or London or Stockholm or whatnot, and everyone can relate to that, and everyone it's that's something that even non-philatelists can connect with.
Or even that story, just there with the airplane, most people don't get to experience that,
I mean, just the narrative of Monte Carlo. You tell it to your friends. Prince Albert is your president, and he comes to have dinner with you on the Saturday night, and you're sitting in Alain Ducasse's 3 Michelin star restaurant, the Hotel de Paris. It's not your average stamp show, is it? Where people are sitting in front of dollar boxes.
Yeah. There's such a massive definition for the word. It can be dollar
so many
boxes
things qualify as philately.
Yeah.
However, don't get me wrong. The dollar boxes at stamp shows are still where it's all at. You got so excited about finding 2 or 3 covers last weekend. There is much more excitement in finding something for $1 or $10 that is worth $100 than it is buying a major piece at auction that you then got to spend 25%, on cost as well. The dollar box is still more fun.
I'll be being in St. Louis. It was digging through boxes of stuff that reminded me why I missed shows so much.
I mentioned earlier, right at the beginning, about your generation are now the influencers of our hobby. But if you still go to the average stamp club, you don't see young people. And that's something we've got to address. We've really got to address.
Yeah.
I feel like our generation are not joiners. They'd rather observe from a distance or tweet about something or watch YouTube videos rather than, but that's at least my perception, because I think Michael and I are in the minority of people who want to belong to the APS and go to shows and get our hands dirty with the actual physical side of the hobby.
But they didn't grow up with the necessity to participate in person. They've grown up with the accessibility of the internet and the luxury, if you will, of being able to find anything online. They don't understand that so much of the hobby was based around showing up, and it's a hands-on hobby, and you go to the shows, and it's tactile. So it's going to be, I think, a little difficult to convince people of our age and younger that this is a way to experience the hobby that's more exciting than just looking at things online.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that Gary Lowe has to be congratulated for the latest edition of the American Philatelist. The first half of that magazine should be made into a standalone monograph and be distributed to every school, every stamp club, because how to build a collection. That is probably the best edition I've ever read of the American Philatelist.
Yeah, it's necessary. It's necessary for people to know this stuff before they get into serious collecting. And as they're getting into serious collecting, it's definitely helpful.
There has to be a measure of you have to show aspiration, that people aspire to the great collections, but the ground roots of the hobby on how to build your collection from. I was blown away by that edition, and of course interviewing some great friends of mine like Carol, and it was done really, really well. Mm-hmm. I have tweeted Gary to let him know how I thought of it.
Yeah.
This is fantastic, Simon. Is there anything else you want to add? Any other topics that you were hoping to cover? Because I've enjoyed this very much.
This has been great.
I miss seeing you over in Europe, but it's been fun to reconnect like this.
No, it's been a great conversation because I appreciate that as a hobby we've got to change. Mm-hmm. I mean, what have you got for your this CWP? You've got something like 600 subscribers, and some of the editions have been looked at 1,400 times, 1,500 times. I mean, it's not huge numbers, but it is for our hobby.
Mm. Yeah.
And I think Graham gets lots of people looking at his stuff. And Graham Peck's stuff just makes me laugh. It creases me sometimes, but it's so good.
Yeah. I think we're beginning as a hobby. We're on our way there, and it's just about finding what works and what works for everybody.
The only thing I wanted to cover that we haven't covered is, of course, the big sale in July. I think it is, isn't it?
In June.
Yeah.
What is your do you have a prediction? Do you have a take on the I'm sure everybody knows by now, but we're talking about the sale of the 1 cent magenta British Guiana and the inverted Jenny plate block.
Yeah, I'm only glad that rarity is not directly correlated to price. because I have quite a few unique items in my collection, and they're worth a fraction of the, and that's really good for most collectors.
You should be thankful while buying, but disappointed while selling, I suppose. If they're not.
Yeah, I mean, the block of the Jenny block. I mean, what is there 4 or 5 blocks now?
There's a couple, yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah,
4.
And the last time that sold, $5 million, was it?
It was the center line from the Gross collection.
Was the last that sold, I think.
Yeah. My predictions are it probably won't be bought by a philatelist. Mm. It'll be bought by someone with an awful lot of money who wants it as an iconic item. I mean, so far, every single person that's ever bought that item hasn't lost money.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if that happens again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think the entire philatelic world has there. Yeah, I think
you're in the trade.
Yeah, I think the entire philatelic world has their eyes on it, but I think that's right. There's a lot of rare items like this are gaining interest from people outside of the hobby. And whether or not they use them as a stepping stone to become serious collectors themselves, or they use them as, like you said, iconic items of rarity that they're just collecting. It is something we'll find out, but I think it will sell to someone who either is philately adjacent or someone who's looking to buy something that just holds significance in an area itself. Like if a rare document came on the market, or a rare coin, or anything that's unique. This is the only plate number block. It has, whether or not you're a philatelist yourself, it has its place in American history.
I only wish that the most expensive stamp in the world was prettier.
My other thought on it that I've been saying that I think is interesting is that usually there are decades between sales of iconic items. The Alexandria Blue Boy sold in 1981, and then we sold it in 2019. The Baden Era of Color, the Triskelion Yellow hasn't been sold in many, many years. And the Magenta, even before the sale in 2014, had been off the market for quite a while with all the intrigue of DuPont's murder. So I think it's especially interesting for an item such as this to have been off the market for only 7 years. I think that sort of recency bias is sort of unprecedented when we're talking about the 10 most iconic philatelic items. I think that a 7-year turnaround is much different than what we've come to expect.
I hope for Stuart's sake that he realizes his investment. I'd be surprised if he does at this moment in time, to be quite honest. I'll be surprised. I think it's been, as you say, it's only 7 years.
Yeah.
My exhibit in Greece on the my presentation on the aesthetics of exhibiting, was about beauty of your exhibit, and my last slide was ugly can be beautiful too, and I showed that stamp. And it's beautiful because it's worth $9.5 million, but it's not the prettiest stamp in the world.
Yeah.
Not quite.
In fact, now I think people will say that the back is more valuable than the front.
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
But hey, be interesting to see.
Yeah, no, we're going to be talking a lot about that as the sale date quickly approaches.
Yeah.
I mean, Sotheby's are doing an awful lot in getting it out there. I mean, the amount of articles appearing and the marketing, they're doing their job, aren't they?
Yeah.
Very well.
It'll catch the attention of the appropriate buyer, hopefully.
Interesting. At least it gets the friends of mine are saying, well, if that's worth $9.5 million, have you got any unique items? My sons and my daughter, how many unique items have you got in your collection, Dad? Are they worth $9.5 million? No.
Yeah.
Well, Simon,
I think
fantastic.
I've got unique items that aren't worth 9.5 million cents.
I mean, it gets the people talking, though. It gets philatelists, but additionally, it gets non-collectors talking about stamps whenever items like this go on the market.
And they can only be good. All publicity is good publicity.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This has been incredible. Thank you so much for taking the time out to meet with us and talk to us about your collecting habits and the exhibits and everything.
And the hobby in general.
And the hobby in general, yeah.
Let's hope it carries on as it's going. I hope so too. And I applaud you guys. It's super what you're doing. Keep up with it.
Thank you.
We appreciate that very much.
I look forward to more of them.
Thanks. This has been great.
Jolly good. Well, thank you guys. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Take care.
We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Cheers then. Bye.
Mike, I really enjoyed that one. Simon is just so obviously not only a great collector, but a great spokesperson for the hobby and for the beauty of philately and the historical importance of philately. Just really, really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that he was able to put together a 588-page display exhibit on a country like,
which is what the Royal expects of you. That's
Yeah.
what's crazy, is that this isn't a one-off thing. This is everybody who gives the 1:00 presentation at the Royal has to put together that many frames.
yeah, but for
Over
that country,
36
it's that.
standard exhibit frames of material.
Yeah. That's wild. 2 years to put together. You can tell that he really, really is passionate for what he collects.
I love that
takes
he
it
was
incredibly
taken by
seriously.
these stories. Like any young boy reading these stories about pirates and far off lands.
Yeah,
And he's just so captivated by that. That's like still what he collects to this day. I love when somebody decides so early what they're going to specialize in, and then just takes it to its conclusion.
yeah, and we've mentioned this a lot, but like you said, anybody could be captivated by these stories. Cheryl said it, I feel, the best. We have to stop talking to collectors just themselves. We got to talk to other people, because hearing those kinds of stories is what's going to bring people back into the hobby, or not back into, but maybe back into, like Simon himself. You said he got back into it, but entice them in the first place to collect these things.
Absolutely.
And of course we're not going to force anyone to collect, but I feel like there's there's so many people who would if they just knew the exciting history behind this kind of material.
I agree completely. This episode was really great. I enjoyed this one, and I think we should do it again real soon. So thank you to everyone for listening. As always, if you're watching on YouTube, you can listen to us on Google, Apple, Spotify podcasts. If you're listening to us as a podcast, you can watch this on YouTube.
Yeah.
You can visit us at philatelistpodcast.com. You can also send us an email at philatelistpodcast@gmail.com. He's Michael J. Court.
I was just gonna say, or just tweet
at us. He's Michael J. Court. I'm Charles L. Epting.
Yeah.
And
this has been Conversations with Philatelists.
What else is there to say? It's been a good one, and I'll talk to you real soon, Michael.
Absolutely. I will. I'll see you then.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye.
Bye.